She thought it was just traffic until she saw her millionaire husband and his pregnant mistress, but what happened next left the whole city talking. The glass shattered against the Persian rug, amber liquid spreading like blood across the intricate patterns. Vivian's voice cracked through the mansion's silence. "Tell me why my husband is escorting his pregnant mistress into a hospital. Tell me why you've been lying to me." Marcus stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Vivian, please. Just sit down and let me explain." "I don't want to sit down." Vivian's perfectly composed exterior finally broke. "I want the truth, Marcus. How long have you been sleeping with her? When were you planning to tell me? After the baby was born? After you set her up in some apartment across town? It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, I just watched my husband of 12 years help his pregnant girlfriend into Riverside General Hospital." Marcus's face went pale. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The truth is that Rebecca is my sister." Silence crashed between them like a physical force. "What did you just say?" "Rebecca is my sister. My half-sister. From my father's affair when I was 10 years old." "You don't have a sister." Vivian's mind was reeling, searching for solid ground in a world that had just tilted sideways. "We've been married for 12 years. I would know if you had a sister." "I do. And I've been hiding her from you for 3 years." "Have you ever been absolutely certain about something, only to discover you were completely wrong? Have you ever caught your spouse in what looked like the ultimate betrayal, only to uncover a truth that was somehow even more devastating? What would you do if the perfect life you'd built turned out to be a beautiful lie? This is the story of how one woman's worst nightmare became her greatest blessing. How a moment of suspected infidelity exposed the real crisis in a 12-year marriage. And how what happened next didn't just transform one family, but left an entire city talking. If you've ever felt like something was missing from your so-called perfect life, you need to hear this story. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to witness will change how you see everything. And drop a comment below. Would you have reacted like Vivian, or would you have walked away? Let me know. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Morrison Boulevard, 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon that would shatter everything Vivian Ashford thought she knew about her life. The traffic on Morrison Boulevard shouldn't have been this bad at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. Vivian Ashford drummed her perfectly manicured nails against the leather steering wheel of her Range Rover, mentally calculating whether she'd make it to the gallery opening on time. The Westbrook Collection was opening in 45 minutes, and as co-owner of Ashford & Klein Fine Arts, being late would send the wrong message. It suggested a lack of respect, a loss of control. Control was something Vivian Ashford never lost. 12 years of marriage to Marcus Ashford, real estate mogul and self-made millionaire, had taught her the value of precision. Their life together was perfectly curated, like one of the exhibitions she staged at her gallery. A Victorian mansion in Riverside's historic district with original crown molding and imported Italian marble. 2 successful careers that generated more money than they could spend. A marriage that functioned with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. No mess. No chaos. No unpleasant surprises. She glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror, checking that her hair was still perfectly in place, her makeup still flawless. Everything had to be perfect. It always was. The traffic lurched forward 6 inches, then stopped again. Vivian sighed, her eyes scanning the street ahead, looking for the source of the delay. That's when her gaze snagged on something that made her breath catch in her throat. A silver Mercedes. The same model Marcus drove. The same custom paint color he'd special ordered last year. It was pulling up to the curb outside Riverside General Hospital. Vivian's heart began to pound. Marcus had said he had meetings until 6. A property acquisition in the Harbor District, followed by drinks with potential investors. He'd kissed her cheek that morning, distracted and distant as always, and told her not to wait up if the investors wanted dinner. But there he was, stepping out of the driver's side of his Mercedes at 2:15 in the afternoon. Vivian watched, frozen, as her husband straightened his charcoal suit jacket. The Tom Ford one she'd given him for their 12th anniversary 3 months ago. He moved around the car with purpose, with urgency, and opened the passenger door with a tenderness that made Vivian's stomach twist. The woman who emerged was young. Mid-20s, perhaps. She had dark hair that cascaded past her shoulders in glossy waves, and she wore a flowing lavender dress that couldn't conceal her condition. She was very, very pregnant. Marcus's hand went immediately to the small of her back, protective and intimate. He leaned close, saying something that made her smile. A real smile, warm and trusting. Then he cradled her elbow with his other hand as they walked slowly toward the hospital's entrance. Vivian knew that entrance. She'd researched every department of Riverside General when her sister had complications during her pregnancy 3 years ago. That was the entrance for high-risk obstetrics. A horn blared behind her, jarring and aggressive. Vivian glanced up to see that the traffic had moved forward 20 feet. Cars were swerving around her Range Rover, drivers shooting her annoyed glances. But Vivian couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what she'd just witnessed. Her husband. Her Marcus. With a pregnant woman young enough to be his daughter. Touching her with a tenderness he hadn't shown Vivian in years. Walking her into a hospital with the kind of care and attention that spoke of intimacy, of shared secrets, of a connection Vivian had forgotten existed. How long? The question screamed through her mind. How long had this been going on? Another horn. More angry drivers. Somehow, Vivian's hands remembered how to function. She pressed the accelerator, merged back into traffic, and drove. Not to the gallery. Not to the Westbrook Collection opening that had seemed so important 40 seconds ago. She drove home. The Victorian mansion looked the same as always when she pulled into the circular driveway. Pristine. Impressive. Perfect. 3 stories of architectural beauty with a manicured lawn and gardens that a professional service maintained twice weekly. Vivian walked through the front door and stood in the marble foyer, and for the first time in 12 years, she really looked at her home. It felt like a museum. Beautiful to look at, carefully curated, but utterly lifeless. The formal living room to her left held furniture that no one ever sat on. Cream-colored sofas positioned at precise angles, decorative pillows that were never disturbed, coffee table books about art and architecture that no one ever read. The dining room to her right showcased a table that seated 12, set with china and crystal that only emerged for the carefully orchestrated dinner parties they hosted 4 times a year. Obligations, really. Networking events disguised as social gatherings. Vivian walked through room after room, her heels clicking against hardwood and marble, echoing in the emptiness. When had this happened? When had their home become a showpiece instead of a sanctuary? When had their marriage become a performance instead of a partnership? She found herself in Marcus's study, a room she rarely entered. Dark wood, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with real estate journals and business texts. His desk was neat, organized, every paper in its place. Vivian opened the bottom drawer. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Evidence, maybe. Proof of the affair she'd witnessed. Hotel receipts, love letters, something concrete to confirm what her eyes had already told her. Instead, she found a bottle of Macallan 25-year Scotch. Marcus's favorite. He'd pour himself 2 fingers on Friday evenings, his one indulgence after a week of deals and negotiations. Vivian never joined him. She preferred wine, and only at carefully moderated social events. But today, she needed something that burned. Her hands were shaking as she poured 3 fingers into a crystal tumbler. The Scotch tasted like smoke and regret. She carried it to the leather chair facing the window and sat, watching the afternoon sun paint shadows across the lawn. The clock on the mantel ticked. 3 p.m. 4 p.m. 5 p.m. Vivian sat in the growing darkness, the scotch warming her stomach but doing nothing to thaw the ice spreading through her chest. The front door opened at 6:47 p.m. Vivian. Marcus's voice echoed through the foyer. His footsteps crossed the marble, hesitated, then moved toward his study. Sorry I'm late. The meeting with the investors ran longer than expected. We ended up at Donovan's for drinks and... He appeared in the doorway and stopped mid-sentence. Vivian was still sitting in his chair, the empty scotch glass in her hand, her makeup no longer flawless. Mascara had run slightly from tears she didn't remember shedding. Marcus froze, his briefcase in one hand, reading her expression with the skill of a man who'd negotiated countless high-stakes deals. He knew when he'd been caught. Vivian. He set down the briefcase carefully. What's wrong? Her voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady. Who is she? What? Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after 12 years. Vivian stood, setting the glass down with exaggerated care. Who is she, Marcus? I don't know what you're talking about. The pregnant woman. Vivian watched his face carefully, watching the exact moment the color drained from his skin. Outside Riverside General Hospital. Around 2:15 this afternoon. Marcus's mouth opened. Closed. He looked like a man searching desperately for the right words and finding none. Vivian. I can explain. How long? The steadiness in her voice cracked. How long have you been sleeping with her? Weeks. Months. Years. When were you planning to tell me, Marcus? After the baby was born. After you'd set her up in some discreet apartment and started playing house on the weekends. It's not. Marcus stepped forward, hands raised. God, Vivian, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. The words came out as a shout, raw and jagged. Vivian felt the scotch glass slip from her fingers and heard it shatter against the Persian rug, but she couldn't stop. Tell me why my husband is escorting his pregnant mistress into a hospital. Tell me why you've been lying to me. Marcus's face crumpled. Please. Just sit down and let me explain everything. I don't want to sit down. Vivian was shaking now, 12 years of perfect composure finally breaking apart. I want the truth. I want to know how long you've been making a fool of me. I want to know when you decided our marriage wasn't enough. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her shoulders, not roughly, but with enough force to make her look at him. His eyes, those gray eyes she'd once loved, were filled with something that looked almost like panic. The truth. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The truth, Vivian, is that Rebecca is my sister. The words hung in the air between them. Vivian stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What did you just say? Rebecca is my sister. Marcus's hands fell from her shoulders. My half-sister. From my father's affair when I was 10 years old. Silence crashed through the study like a shockwave. Vivian felt her legs go weak. She sank into the chair behind her, her mind racing, trying to process words that didn't make sense. You don't have a sister. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. We've been married for 12 years, Marcus. I would know if you had a sister. I do. And I've been hiding her from you for 3 years. 3 years. Vivian felt like she'd been punched. You've known about her for 3 years. Marcus moved to his desk, unlocked the bottom drawer with a key he kept on his keychain, and pulled out a worn manila folder. He handed it to Vivian with trembling hands. Inside were documents that would change everything. A birth certificate for Rebecca Marie Ashford, born 26 years ago in Riverside General Hospital. Mother, Eleanor Hayes. Father, Richard Ashford. Medical records. School transcripts. A DNA test from a private lab, dated 3 years ago, showing a 25% genetic match between Marcus Ashford and Rebecca Ashford. The percentage consistent with half-siblings. Letters. Dozens of them, written in elegant cursive on yellowed paper. Dear Richard, I'm writing to tell you that your daughter took her first steps today. Dear Richard, Rebecca asked about her father again. I didn't know what to tell her. Dear Richard, she's starting kindergarten. She looks just like you. And photographs. A gap-toothed 7-year-old with gray eyes holding a certificate for perfect attendance. A teenage girl in a graduation cap and gown, smiling uncertainly at the camera. A recent photo of a young woman with Marcus's distinctive features, his cheekbones and his eyes, but softer, more vulnerable. Vivian looked up from the folder, her hands shaking. I don't understand. Marcus sank into the chair across from her, and for the first time in their 12-year marriage, Vivian saw him look truly broken. My father had an affair. Marcus's voice was hollow, devoid of emotion. When I was 10 years old, he was sleeping with his secretary. Eleanor Hayes. Young, beautiful, from a working-class family. She got pregnant. Vivian felt like she was listening to a stranger's story. My mother found out when Eleanor was 5 months along. Marcus continued. There was a confrontation. Threats of divorce. Public scandal. My father was building his real estate empire, and a bastard child would have ruined everything. What did they do? They paid her off. $200,000. A small fortune back then. The agreement was simple. Eleanor would disappear. She'd raise the child alone, never contact our family, never tell the child who her father was. In exchange, she'd be financially comfortable for life. And she agreed. She was 23 years old, pregnant, and alone. Marcus looked at Vivian with eyes full of old shame. What choice did she have? So your father just erased a child from his life. Like she never existed. My parents went on with their perfect life. The perfect marriage, the perfect family, the perfect reputation. They never mentioned Eleanor again. Never acknowledged that there was a child out there with Ashford blood. How did you find out? Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't. She found me. Marcus gestured to the folder. 2 years ago, Eleanor died. Breast cancer. Before she passed, she told Rebecca the truth about her father. Gave her that box of documents. Letters she'd written to my father over the years. Letters he never responded to. Rebecca reached out to you. 3 years ago, I got a letter at my office. Very carefully worded. No demands, no accusations. She said she'd recently learned that Richard Ashford was her biological father, and she understood if I wanted nothing to do with her, but she'd like to meet for coffee if I was willing. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. She just wanted to know her brother. Vivian stared at this man she'd been married to for 12 years and realized she'd never really known him at all. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out smaller than she'd intended. Marcus looked up, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made Vivian's chest ache. Because I was ashamed. His voice broke. Of my family. Of what they did. Of the kind of people who could pay $200,000 to erase a child from their lives. Who could choose their reputation over their own daughter. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Do you know what it's like to discover that your parents, the people who raised you to value integrity and honor, were capable of something so cruel? To realize that somewhere out there was a sister you never knew, a woman who grew up without a father because he chose his image over her existence. That doesn't explain why you didn't tell me, Marcus. He turned to face her, and Vivian saw tears on his cheeks for the first time in their marriage. I was terrified you'd see me differently. That you'd look at me and see them. My cold, calculating parents who valued money and reputation above everything else. He swallowed hard. We've built this perfect life together, Vivian. This perfect marriage, this perfect image. What if I told you that I came from people capable of abandoning a child? What if you decided I was just like them? So you lied instead. I didn't lie. Marcus's voice rose defensively. I just didn't tell you. Is there a difference? Vivian's laugh was bitter, sharp. For 3 years, you've been meeting with her. Building a relationship. Playing the role of devoted brother. And I knew nothing. How can I believe anything you say now? Marcus crossed the room and knelt before her chair, taking her cold hands in his. Rebecca is 26 years old, pregnant, and completely alone. His words tumbled out urgently. The father of her baby is some guy she dated for 6 months. When she told him she was pregnant, he told her to take care of it and blocked her number. Vivian felt a pang of unwanted sympathy. She has no family except me. Marcus continued. Her mother is dead. She never knew her father. She's high risk, Vivian. Preeclampsia and gestational diabetes. Today was a specialist appointment at the high-risk obstetrics clinic. The pieces started falling into place. The tenderness Vivian had witnessed. The protective hand on Rebecca's back. It wasn't the intimacy of lovers. It was the protectiveness of an older brother. I know I should have told you. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. I know I was wrong to keep this from you. But please, Vivian. She needs help. And I couldn't abandon her like our parents did. Vivian looked at this man she'd married. Really looked at him. Beneath the expensive suit and the carefully maintained image, she saw fear. Not fear of being caught, but fear of being seen. Fear of exposing the ugly truths hidden in his family's pristine facade. And she realized something that hurt more than any affair could have. Their marriage had become a place where vulnerability wasn't safe. Where Marcus felt he had to hide his struggles, his shame, his secret sister, because showing any crack in the perfect image meant risking rejection. When had that happened? When had they stopped being partners and started being performers? I need time. Vivian pulled her hands from his and stood. I need to think. Of course. Marcus rose slowly. Whatever you need. Vivian walked past him, through the museum of a house they'd built together, and up the stairs to the guest bedroom. She locked the door behind her and sank onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. 7 missed calls from Diane, her business partner. Texts asking where she was, if everything was okay, if she'd forgotten about the Westbrook collection opening. Vivian typed a brief response. Family emergency. Handle the opening without me. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. Her husband had a secret sister. A pregnant, abandoned, vulnerable sister he'd been helping for 3 years. And he'd hidden it all because their marriage had become so focused on maintaining appearances that he couldn't trust her with the truth. Sleep didn't come. At 3 a.m., Vivian found herself back in Marcus's study. The folder was still on the desk where she'd left it. She opened it again, examining the photographs more carefully. Rebecca at 7, missing her 2 front teeth, holding a certificate for perfect attendance. She had Marcus's gray eyes, his distinctive bone structure. Rebecca at 13, awkward and gangly in a school photo, braces gleaming. Rebecca at 18, high school graduation, cap and gown, smiling tentatively at the camera. No family in the background. Just her and her mother, Eleanor, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. Rebecca now, at 26. The photo was recent, probably taken within the last few months. She stood in front of a modest apartment building, one hand on her pregnant belly, smiling at whoever was taking the picture. Probably Marcus. Vivian studied that smile. It was genuine, warm, hopeful. The smile of someone who'd found family after a lifetime of being alone. And Marcus had given her that. Whatever his reasons for keeping the secret, whatever his flaws and failures, he'd shown up for his sister when she needed him. The realization settled over Vivian like a weight. Marcus had hidden Rebecca because their marriage had become a place where vulnerability meant weakness. Where anything less than perfect meant failure. Where image mattered more than truth. And Vivian had helped create that environment. She thought about their 12 years together. The carefully scheduled date nights that felt more like business meetings. The sex that happened on Saturday nights with predictable regularity but zero passion. The conversations that never went deeper than property acquisitions and gallery exhibitions and which charity events they should attend. When had they stopped really talking? When had they stopped really seeing each other? Morning light was filtering through the windows when Vivian heard movement in the kitchen below. She descended the stairs slowly, her body aching from a sleepless night. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen island, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His hair was disheveled, his eyes hollow. A cup of black coffee sat untouched in front of him. He looked up when she entered, his expression guarded, hopeful, terrified. Vivian poured herself coffee and stood across the island from him. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. I want to meet her. Vivian's voice was steady. Marcus's head snapped up. What? Your sister. Rebecca. I want to meet her. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Vivian wrapped her hands around the warm mug. If we're going to figure this out, our marriage, your sister, any of it, I need to meet her. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Hope, maybe, or relief. She lives in Brookside. A small apartment. I've been helping with rent and medical expenses. Of course he had. Vivian felt a complicated mix of emotions. Admiration for his loyalty. Hurt that he'd hidden it. Shame that she'd created a marriage where hiding felt necessary. Today. Vivian met his eyes. I want to meet her today. The Brookside neighborhood was a world away from their historic mansion. Modest apartment buildings lined streets where children played on cracked sidewalks and laundry hung from balconies. Rebecca's building was tidy but aging, the lobby smelling faintly of industrial cleaner and someone's cooking. Vivian followed Marcus up 3 flights of stairs. No elevator. She thought of Rebecca, heavily pregnant with high-risk conditions, climbing these stairs multiple times a day. Apartment 3F. Marcus knocked softly. Rebecca. It's Marcus. I brought someone. Footsteps approached. The door opened. The woman standing before them was smaller than Vivian expected. The pregnancy made her seem fragile rather than robust, like a strong wind might knock her over. She wore leggings and an oversized sweater, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. But her eyes. Those were definitely Marcus's eyes. Gray, intelligent, guarded. You're Vivian. Rebecca's voice was soft. From the photos Marcus showed me. He's shown you photos. Just a few. From your wedding, and a couple from charity events. Rebecca bit her lip nervously. I'm sorry. This must be so weird for you. Marcus said you didn't know about me until yesterday. I didn't. Vivian studied this young woman who was, technically, her sister-in-law. But I do now. An awkward silence stretched between them. Would you like to come in? Rebecca stepped back. I just made tea. Well, herbal tea. I can't have caffeine because of the baby. The apartment was tiny. A studio, really, with a kitchenette along one wall and a corner that had been converted into a makeshift nursery. The walls were painted a soft yellow. A second-hand crib stood in the corner, alongside a small dresser with carefully folded baby clothes in soft pastels. It's not much. Rebecca followed Vivian's gaze. But Marcus helped me make it nice. The crib was his idea. Vivian watched Marcus move around the small space with familiar ease. He'd been here before. Many times, probably. They sat awkwardly, Vivian and Marcus on a worn futon that doubled as a bed, Rebecca in the single chair. She poured tea into mismatched mugs. I didn't ask him to lie to you. Rebecca's words came out in a rush. When we first met, I told him he should tell you about me. But he said. She trailed off, glancing at Marcus uncertainly. He said what? Vivian prompted gently. That you like things orderly. That springing a secret half-sister on you would be disruptive. Rebecca's smile was sad. I'm used to being someone's secret. My mom never married. Never even dated much after my father. She said loving in Ashford had ruined her for other men. The casual devastation in that statement made Vivian's chest ache. Your mother. She spoke carefully. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Rebecca's eyes glistened. She was everything to me. After she died, I felt so alone. That's when I found Marcus. I thought maybe he'd be like our father. Cold. Angry that I existed. But he was kind. He wanted to know me. Vivian glanced at Marcus, who was staring into his tea like it held answers. Then I got pregnant. Rebecca continued, one hand moving protectively to her belly. Stupid mistake with a guy I thought I loved. When I told him, he told me to take care of it and blocked my number. She wiped at her eyes. I was terrified to tell Marcus. Thought he'd decide I was too much trouble. But I told her I'd help. Marcus finished quietly. With medical care, living expenses, whatever she needed. She's my sister. Family doesn't abandon family. The irony wasn't lost on Vivian. Marcus, scarred by his parents' abandonment of Rebecca and her mother, had overcompensated by becoming intensely protective. And in doing so, had created a secret that nearly destroyed his marriage. The baby. Vivian heard herself ask. When are you due? 6 weeks. Rebecca's face softened. It's a girl. I'm naming her Eleanor, after my mom. Do you have support? For after the birth. Help with childcare while you recover. Rebecca hesitated. Marcus has been researching postpartum doulas and newborn care specialists. He's trying to hire someone to help for the first few weeks. More money thrown at problems. More transactions instead of connection. It was the Ashford way, apparently. Vivian surprised herself with what came next. What if I helped? Both Marcus and Rebecca stared at her. You. Marcus set down his mug carefully. Vivian, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. Vivian looked at Rebecca, this young woman she'd just met, who'd been abandoned by her father and then by her baby's father. I know we just met. I know this is all complicated and messy. But I've spent 12 years building a career, attending charity galas, curating art shows. And sitting here, looking at what you've built. She gestured at the modest apartment, the carefully prepared nursery. All of it feels so empty compared to this. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Vivian felt certainty settling over her. Family doesn't abandon family. Isn't that what Marcus said? Yes. Rebecca whispered. Then let me do this. Let me help. Rebecca started crying in earnest then. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Just. Thank you. Marcus looked at Vivian with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe. Or wonder. Or the first stirrings of hope that maybe their marriage wasn't as broken as he'd feared. Say yes. Vivian replied. That's all you need to say. Yes. Rebecca managed through her tears. Yes. Please. Yes. That afternoon marked the beginning of something Vivian hadn't anticipated. She started visiting Rebecca regularly. Once a week at first, then twice, then nearly every other day. They attended prenatal classes together at the community center, Vivian taking notes while Rebecca practiced breathing exercises. They shopped for baby supplies, Vivian insisting on buying the expensive stroller Rebecca had been eyeing but couldn't afford. "Don't," Rebecca protested. "You've already done so much. It's just money," Vivian heard herself say. "And I have more than I know what to do with." They assembled furniture in the tiny apartment, Vivian holding pieces steady while Rebecca read instructions. They folded tiny clothes and organized diapers and debated the merits of different brands of bottles. And somewhere in the midst of all that domestic chaos, Vivian began to understand what had been wrong with her marriage. She and Marcus had been performing roles. The successful power couple. The art gallery owner and the real estate mogul. The perfect society marriage. Appearances mattered. Image mattered. Success mattered. But underneath all that performance, they'd lost track of who they actually were. Rebecca, with her modest studio and uncertain future, had something Vivian's polished life completely lacked. Authenticity. "How do you do it?" Vivian asked one afternoon as they assembled a changing table. Marcus was away on business, and Vivian had volunteered to help. "Do what?" Rebecca tightened a screw with careful precision. "Stay so hopeful." Vivian gestured around the small apartment. "Your mother died. Your baby's father abandoned you. You're facing single motherhood in a tiny apartment with limited resources. You have health complications that could be serious. Yet you still smile. You still believe things will work out." Rebecca set down the screwdriver and looked at Vivian thoughtfully. "My mom used to say that bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." She touched her pregnant belly gently. "Yeah, Eleanor's father is a jerk. Yeah, I wish my mom was here to meet her granddaughter. But I can spend my energy being angry about what I don't have, or I can focus on what I do have. Which is this little girl. A brother who actually cares about me. And now, somehow, I have you too." Rebecca's smile was genuine. "I can choose to be bitter, or I can choose to be grateful. Bitterness only hurts me." Vivian felt something crack open inside her chest. "I've been drinking poison for years." The admission came out as a whisper. "My marriage has been dying slowly, and I pretended not to notice because acknowledging it would mean admitting our perfect life wasn't perfect at all." "What happened?" Rebecca asked gently. "Marcus talks about you sometimes, when you first met. He gets this look in his eyes, like he's remembering something beautiful." Vivian found herself talking. Really talking. In a way she hadn't in years. "We met at a gallery opening 10 years ago. I was fresh out of grad school, just starting at Ashford and Klein. He was this ambitious developer with huge dreams and zero knowledge of art." She smiled at the memory. "He spent the entire evening asking me questions about abstract expressionism. He didn't know Pollock from Rothko, but he was so eager to learn. So eager to understand what I loved about it." "That sounds romantic." It was. For a while. Vivian's smile faded. Then his business exploded. Ashford Properties went from a small firm to a multi-million-dollar empire. My career took off. We became these successful, busy people who happened to live in the same house. You stopped connecting. We stopped everything. Vivian felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I can't remember the last time we had a real conversation. The kind where you talk about things that scare you, things that matter. Everything became transactional. Business. Schedules. Property deals and gallery exhibitions and networking events. Maybe that's why he kept me secret." Rebecca suggested quietly. "Maybe he knew your marriage wasn't a safe place for messy, complicated truths." The observation hit Vivian like a physical blow because it was absolutely true. Marcus had hidden Rebecca not because he was ashamed of her, but because he was ashamed of his family's cruelty. And he'd known, consciously or not, that their marriage had become all about maintaining the perfect image. Anything that disrupted that image, anything messy or complicated or real, wasn't welcome. "You're right," Vivian whispered. "I created a marriage where my husband couldn't trust me with difficult things. So did he," Rebecca pointed out. "It takes two people to build walls. How did you get so wise?" "Probably around the time I realized I was going to raise a baby completely alone and had to figure out what actually matters." Rebecca's hand moved to her belly. "Turns out, it's not money or status or having everything figured out. It's love. Connection. Showing up for people even when it's hard." Vivian drove home that evening with new clarity. She found Marcus in his study, as usual, buried in property assessments and market analyses. "We need to talk." She stood in the doorway. Marcus looked up warily. "About Rebecca. About us. About what we've become." Vivian crossed the room and perched on the edge of his desk. "About why you felt like you couldn't tell me about your sister for 3 years. "Vivian," I explained. "Let me finish. Please." She took a breath. "I've been thinking about what you said. That I like things orderly. That I don't handle disruption well. You're right. I shouldn't have said that." "No. You should have. Because it's true." Vivian felt tears building. "I've built my entire life around control and perfection. The perfect career. The perfect home. The perfect marriage. And somewhere in all that perfection, I lost anything real." Marcus stared at her. "Spending time with Rebecca has shown me what I've been missing." Vivian continued. "She's facing single motherhood in a studio apartment with serious health complications, and yet she has more joy, more authenticity, more real life than I've felt in years. Where is this going?" Marcus asked quietly. "I want messy." The words tumbled out. "I want real. I want a marriage where my husband tells me about his secret sister instead of hiding her for 3 years because he's afraid I can't handle it. I was wrong to keep it from you." "Yes. You were. But I was wrong too." Vivian reached for his hand. "I created an environment where you felt like you had to be perfect. Where vulnerability meant weakness. Where anything less than the polished, successful image we projected to the world wasn't acceptable." Marcus's fingers tightened around hers. "I don't know how to be messy," he admitted. "My parents raised me to value control above everything. To never show weakness. To maintain the image no matter what." "Neither do I," Vivian said. "But maybe we can learn together." Marcus stood slowly, crossing to stand in front of her. He cupped her face with both hands, looking at her. Really looking. Like he was seeing her for the first time in years. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "For the secrets. For the distance. For letting us become strangers who share a house." "I'm sorry too," Vivian whispered. "For making you feel like you couldn't trust me with hard truths. Can we fix this?" "I don't know. But I want to try." Marcus kissed her then. It was tentative, awkward, uncertain. They'd had sex as recently as last Saturday, but this felt different. This felt like the first kiss all over again. Vulnerable and scared and real. It was a beginning. The weeks that followed brought gradual shifts to the Ashford household. Marcus started coming home earlier, leaving work at the office instead of bringing it home. They had dinner together. Real dinners with actual conversations about more than just schedules and obligations. Vivian invited Rebecca to the mansion for the first time. The young woman stood in the marble foyer, her pregnant belly making her movements awkward, her eyes wide as she took in the grandeur. "This is where you live?" Rebecca breathed. It's like a palace. It's like a museum. Vivian corrected. Cold and untouchable. I'm thinking of redecorating. Making it feel more like a home. They spent the afternoon in what had been the formal sitting room. Pristine cream furniture that no one ever sat on, positioned for aesthetic rather than comfort. Vivian watched Rebecca struggle to find a comfortable position, her pregnancy making everything difficult. What if we converted this room? Vivian found herself suggesting. Made it into a real family room. Comfortable furniture. Space for Eleanor to play when she visits. Rebecca's eyes widened. You do that. Why not? Vivian looked around at the beautiful, lifeless room. This house could use some actual life in it. The transformation became a project. Marcus helped move furniture while Vivian and Rebecca shopped for deep, comfortable sofas and soft rugs that prioritized function over form. For the first time in 12 years, Vivian made decorating choices based on what she actually wanted rather than what would look impressive. As November approached, Rebecca's anxiety mounted. What if I'm a terrible mother? She confessed one afternoon, tears streaming down her face. What if I can't handle it? What if I mess everything up? Vivian pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of her belly. You're going to be an amazing mother. She said firmly. You're strong and kind and so full of love. Eleanor is lucky to have you. Will you be there? Rebecca asked. When she's born. I don't want to be alone. Of course. Vivian promised. We'll both be there. The call came 3 weeks early, on a rainy October evening. Marcus answered his phone at 9:30 p.m. His face went pale. We're on our way. They rushed to Riverside General, Marcus driving faster than Vivian had ever seen him drive. They found Rebecca in a labor and delivery room, frightened and in obvious pain. You came. She gasped between contractions. We wouldn't miss this. Marcus took one hand while Vivian took the other. Eleanor Marie Ashford entered the world at 11:43 p.m. Tiny and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn gray like her uncle's. The nurse placed her on Rebecca's chest, and Vivian watched love transform the young woman's face. Would you like to hold her? Rebecca asked after a few minutes, offering the tiny bundle to Vivian. Vivian's hands trembled as she accepted the newborn. Eleanor was so small, so fragile, yet she gripped Vivian's finger with surprising strength. Hello, sweet girl. Vivian whispered, tears streaming down her face. Welcome to the family. Marcus stood beside them, one hand on Vivian's shoulder, looking at his sister and her daughter with unguarded emotion. She's perfect. He said softly. She really is. Rebecca agreed, exhausted but radiant. The first weeks of Eleanor's life brought chaos Vivian had never experienced. She took a leave of absence from the gallery, something that shocked Diane but felt completely right to Vivian. Their pristine mansion became cluttered with baby supplies. Bottles and diapers and tiny clothes. The newly converted family room filled with the sounds of Eleanor's cries and Rebecca's soothing voice. It was messy and exhausting and more alive than the house had felt in 12 years. Vivian learned to change diapers through trial and error and numerous YouTube tutorials. She mastered the art of swaddling. She walked the floors at 3 a.m., bouncing a crying infant and singing off-key lullabies. And she'd never been happier. Thank you. Rebecca said one morning, watching Vivian expertly burp Eleanor. I couldn't do this without you both. Your family. Vivian replied simply. This is what family does. The comment made its way through Riverside social circles with predictable speed. Vivian Ashford, helping raise her husband's illegitimate sister's child. The whispers started at the country club. Vivian heard them while having lunch with former friends. Can you believe she's playing house with Marcus's bastard sister? I heard the girl trapped him. Got pregnant on purpose to get access to the Ashford money. Vivian stood, set down her napkin with deliberate calm, and walked out. The gossip spread to gallery events. Vivian attended the December exhibition and felt eyes following her, heard conversation stop when she approached. If Vivian's transformation is inspiring you, go ahead and smash that subscribe button so you don't miss more stories like this. And drop a blue heart in the comments if you've ever had to choose between what looks good and what feels right. Marcus worried about the damage to their reputation. People are talking. He said one evening. The board members have been asking questions. Some of our social connections have been distant. Let them talk. Vivian was feeding Eleanor a bottle, the infant's tiny hand wrapped around her finger. I don't care what they think anymore. Since when? Since I realized their opinions don't matter. Rebecca matters. Eleanor matters. We matter. Vivian looked up at him. Our marriage was dying because we cared more about appearances than truth. I'm done living that way. Marcus sat beside her on the sofa. I love this version of you. The messy version. The real version. 3 months after Eleanor's birth, Vivian stood in her gallery, preparing for a major exhibition. But her heart wasn't in it anymore. You're distracted. Diane observed. Everything okay? I'm thinking about making some changes. Vivian admitted. Maybe stepping back from day-to-day operations. Diane's eyebrows rose. The Vivian Ashford I know would never step back from anything. Maybe I'm not that Vivian anymore. The conversation continued that evening with Marcus. They sat in the family room, formerly the formal sitting room, with Eleanor asleep in a bassinet nearby. Rebecca had finally gone home to her apartment for some uninterrupted sleep. I want to do something different with my life. Vivian said. The gallery is successful, but it doesn't fulfill me the way it used to. What would fulfill you? Marcus asked with genuine curiosity. I don't know exactly. But helping Rebecca these past months has shown me I want to do work that actually matters. That helps people. She paused, organizing her thoughts. What if we started a foundation? Something that supports single mothers like Rebecca. Marcus's expression shifted from surprise to consideration. Housing assistance. Vivian continued, warming to the idea. Medical care. Childcare support. Job training. All the things Rebecca struggled with. That's actually brilliant. Marcus leaned forward. We have the resources. We could make a real difference. Ashford Properties has buildings that could be converted. Affordable housing with on-site childcare and medical services. Exactly. Vivian felt excitement building. We could partner with local hospitals, social services, create a comprehensive support system. They talked late into the night, plans taking shape. This was the connection Vivian had been missing. Working together towards something meaningful. United by shared purpose rather than just shared assets. The Ashford Family Foundation launched 6 months later. Marcus donated a building in Brookside, converted into affordable apartments with on-site childcare and a medical clinic. The foundation provided rental assistance, healthcare access, job training programs, and mentorship for single mothers across Riverside. Rebecca, with her first-hand experience, became an advisory board member. The publicity was inevitable. From scandal to support, the Ashford family story. Read one headline. Tech mogul and gallery owner transform family drama into community hope. Proclaimed another. Vivian learned to ignore the sensationalism. Yes, their story was unusual. Yes, people loved the drama. But the foundation was helping real people, and that was what actually mattered. One afternoon, a young woman appeared at the foundation's offices. She was perhaps 22, visibly pregnant, and clearly terrified. I saw the article about you. She told Vivian. About how you helped your sister-in-law. I'm alone. The father left when I told him. My family kicked me out. I don't know what to do. Vivian saw Rebecca in this young woman's frightened eyes. You're not alone anymore, she said gently. Let's talk about how we can help. 2 years after that traffic jam on Morrison Boulevard, Vivian stood at a podium addressing Riverside's Community Service Awards. The ballroom was packed with city officials, non-profit leaders, and community members. When I discovered my husband had a secret, Vivian began. I thought my world was ending. I was wrong. It was actually beginning. She glanced at Marcus in the front row. Eleanor, now a chattering toddler, sat on his lap. Rebecca sat beside them, smiling. The truth is messy. Families are complicated. Life rarely follows the perfect plan we imagine. Vivian's voice strengthened. But it's in the messiness that we find what really matters. Connection. Authenticity. Love that isn't contingent on perfect circumstances. The Ashford Family Foundation had helped over 300 single mothers in its first 2 years. After the ceremony, a journalist approached. Mrs. Ashford, your story has captivated this city. From that initial scandal to everything you've built, it's remarkable. What would you say to people facing similar situations? Discovering secrets, dealing with family complications. Vivian considered the question carefully. I'd say that sometimes the things we think will destroy us actually save us. Not the secrets themselves, but what they reveal about who we really are and who we want to be. She looked across the room at her family. I thought I had everything I needed. Success, status, a picture-perfect life. But I was missing what mattered most. Genuine connection. Real love. Authentic relationships. And your marriage. The journalist pressed. How did you rebuild trust after such a significant secret? It wasn't betrayal. Vivian corrected gently. It was fear. Marcus was afraid of being vulnerable, of showing me the parts of his family history that brought him shame. And I had created an environment where perfection was valued over honesty. She smiled. We had to learn how to be messy together. How to show our flaws and struggles instead of hiding them. That's when our marriage actually became real. Later, driving home through Riverside streets, Eleanor chattering in her car seat and Rebecca beside her, Vivian reflected on how dramatically life had changed. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked, glancing at her from the driver's seat. About that afternoon 2 years ago. When I saw you outside the hospital with Rebecca. I was so certain my life was falling apart. And now. Now I understand it was falling together. I just couldn't see it yet. They pulled into the driveway of their Victorian mansion. No longer a pristine showpiece, but a real home. Full of toys and laughter and the beautiful messiness of family life. Rebecca unbuckled Eleanor while Marcus helped carry bags. They moved together with the easy coordination of people who'd become genuine family. Inside, the walls displayed new photographs. Rebecca's first Mother's Day with Eleanor. The foundation's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Marcus and Vivian dancing at their vow renewal 6 months earlier. A small, intimate affair where they promised to love each other with complete honesty and vulnerable authenticity. Mama Viv. Eleanor called, using the name she'd started around her first birthday. Play blocks. Vivian settled onto the floor, letting the toddler climb into her lap. Rebecca joined them, building a wobbly tower that Eleanor promptly knocked down with delighted giggles. Marcus appeared with tea, settling beside them. Remember when this room had white furniture that no one was allowed to touch? He asked. Vaguely. Vivian laughed as Eleanor scattered blocks across the soft rug. Seems like another lifetime. It was. Marcus agreed, his arm around her shoulders. A colder, lonelier lifetime. That evening, After Eleanor was asleep and Rebecca had gone home to her new 2-bedroom apartment the foundation had helped her afford, Marcus and Vivian stood in their bedroom. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I've ever been," Vivian replied honestly. "Which is strange, considering my life is messier and less controlled than ever. Maybe that's the point. Maybe happiness lives in the mess." Vivian thought about the past 2 years. The initial shock. The painful conversations. The gradual rebuilding of trust. Rebecca's courage. Eleanor's joy. The hundreds of women they'd helped through the foundation. "You know what the whole city is talking about now?" she asked. "What?" "Not the scandal. Not the secrets or the drama. They're talking about the good we're doing. The lives we're changing." She smiled. "That's a much better story." Marcus kissed her forehead. "We're writing it together." And they were. Not a perfect story. Those were boring anyway. But a real one. Full of second chances and hard-won redemptions. Of families that formed in unexpected ways and love that survived its own near destruction. Vivian Ashford had once thought that moment in traffic, seeing her husband with a pregnant woman, would be the worst moment of her life. Instead, it had been the beginning of the best one. Because sometimes what looks like betrayal is actually revelation. Sometimes the secrets that threaten to destroy us end up saving us. And sometimes the messiest chapters of our lives lead to the most beautiful endings. If this story moved you, here's what I need you to do. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories for more powerful tales of transformation and redemption. Comment below and tell me, what traffic jam moment in your life ended up being a blessing in disguise. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that sometimes our worst moments become our greatest turning points. Remember, happiness doesn't live in perfection. It lives in authenticity, in messy love, in choosing connection over appearance. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next story.